Hi, Pericles. Thanks for joining today.
Paul, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Pericles Rellas, you are I don't even want to put words to what your message is about in the sense of I want almost to hear from you, but a money mindset expert. I actually wanted to start out by reading something that you had written here, just kind of a powerful start as far as I'm concerned. But our relationship with money is a mirror of our relationship with ourselves and the world around us. So, like whether something that's impactful to somebody, that was really impactful to me. I received um, that relationship because money is such a big subject. And funny enough, it's like one of those, it's kind of one of the holy trinity of, you don't talk about religion and taxes and money. And, you don't, this, it's like money is on that list. And it's like, why aren't we talking about money? It's such a big aspect of people's existence, whether it's viewed as a resource or a necessity, however somebody has that in the mindset. So I actually want to just kind of hear from you is, where did you start with this path? Or is it something that's just always burning in that you just want to share on?
Yeah, I actually stumbled upon it. To be honest, I was 30 years ago when I started my own business as a coach. I wanted to coach people to expand and grow their business, to expand and grow how much money they could earn so they could just have success. That was what I was doing. So I would talk to people about their work, about their business, about what they were doing. And they actually started making more money, which was really great. That's what we kind of wanted them to do. I noticed something after the first few months of making more money. They were in the same place they were before they started working with me. So if they
Yeah.
were somebody that was always just breaking even every single month, they just made it every single month. Well, now they're making a lot more money, but they were still just breaking even. Or they were somebody that was always just a little bit behind. Same
Yeah.
thing. They're making all this money and yet they're still in the same place. I couldn't understand it. Same thing with their emotional state. If they were always worried about money, they had stress about money, they had anxiety about money, they're making more money and they still have those emotions. And I knew there
Mm.
had to be something going on here. So I started to study it and I really dove into the dynamics of what was going on from a psychological perspective, from an energetic perspective, from a spiritual perspective. I was kind of looking at it from all different angles. And over the course of the next couple of years, what I discovered were two things. One is that we all have something that I like to call a financial thermostat. It is a money mindset, but I like the financial thermostat because people can kind of relate to it. And that thermostat determines how much money we can earn, how much money we can keep, as well as our thoughts, feelings, and emotions around money. And then
Okay.
the second thing that I discovered were the four keys to resetting our financial thermostat so we could earn more, we could keep more, and we could have a sense of fulfillment and joy and happiness in our life around money. And so I started delivering this education, these distinctions, these conversations to my clients, and the results were extraordinary. And suddenly, this client was saying, "Hey, I've got a friend who wants to do this. I was telling him about it. Can you work with him? And can you work with her?" And everyone was doing it and talking about it. And it just started growing and developing organically. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, this is my focus of my life. This is the conversation I want to have. And I've been doing that for the last 25 years.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So there's a few different things here. Let's start with the thermostat because when you said that, personally, I have to take an introspective look at it. I feel that we have seasons of our life as well. There's ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but there's been times too where I feel like, okay, well, the income is increasing, but it feels like the tides start to above just above and you're like, wait a second. And you touched on that too. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then you kind of start to dive into it and you hear people talking about budgets and people don't do budgets and do budgets. And there's so much information around that. And I know that as a provider for my family, the guilt or the resentments and those things start to set in. And there's just so much information out there as far as that, and I'm sure you see a lot of different patterns built up. Uh, but do you see a little bit more of the roller coaster or is there a consistency where you see like for that example where the tides rise as fast or is it just
All different based on the individual, but there are specific ways of seeing there's you can look at somebody and say, okay, that's somebody whose financial thermostat is set to only earn a certain amount of money.
Mm,
There's a glass ceiling they can't break through. They just can't get beyond that. If they do get beyond that, they disappear it very, very quickly. It's one of
Mm,
the reasons 70 to 80% of all winners go broke within the first 5 years is
yeah,
their financial thermostat is not set for that kind of money. And if you imagine a thermostat in your home set at 72 degrees, well, if it's 20 degrees outside, you open the windows, that cold air comes in. What's it do? It turns on the heat and it's got
yeah,
to heat that room back up, keep it at 72. If it's really hot outside, same thing. Hot air comes in, gets really hot in the room, AC goes on, brings that room right back down to 72. Our financial thermostat setting cannot be ignored because what happens is, just like with a lotto winner, they make all this money comes flooding in, but their financial thermostat's like, no, no, we got to get rid of all this extra money. We don't realize it's happening, but all we're doing is disappearing money. I was just reading an article about the guy that won the biggest lotto in history. It was like $1 billion or something like that. I think he ended
yeah.
up with $600 million because he took a cash thing. He's bought a $44 million home here. He's a $34 million home there. He's a $20 million home there. He's got a fleet of cars now. He's going on trips all over the world. He'll be broke within a very short period of time. That's his
Mhm.
financial thermostat, getting rid of all that money and bringing it down to where it's set. And until we reset it, we just cannot manage that extra money. Same thing's true for how much money we can keep. I know lots of people, they can make a lot of money. They can make so much money, but they can't hold on to it. At the
Mhm.
end of every month, they're like, where'd it go? Where'd my money go? It's all gone. I don't know where it
Yeah,
is, right? So they can earn it, but they can't keep it. And then there's another group of people, they can earn it, they can keep it, but they're just not happy or they're
ah,
always stressed. They're always
sure.
worried, right? So wherever your setting is, just take a look at what's life like for me right now around money. And that will tell you what your setting is. And you will know very, very quickly, very easily.
Yeah. I actually, when you were talking about even the lotto winner too, I kind of had that image with the thermostat and the HVAC going on where,
Yeah.
you're just making the room bigger, so as you're spending, you're just buying more stuff. So now that those require the core requirements of cost and resources that you have to pump into that. So you just took your room and now you just made it bigger and the furnace just has to just upkeep
Exactly.
that. So here, I want to read one other thing too, before I even get past it too, is, that you had written too, understanding money's place in our lives is not just freeing, it's transformational.
Mm.
So it obviously there's the question is kind of burning there, but it's not because I know there is no real answer. But I mean, you see people as far as time frames. This is where I'm going to go with this. I mean, what is that transformational? I mean, I can only imagine that's really just dependent on the person. But you've seen people make transformations, and I would like to believe that somebody who's open, willing, and introspective, or the observer, and not rigid about things can make a very quick change in their life. I
Yeah.
mean, is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I've seen people transform in a single conversation and
Yeah.
suddenly they see a whole new world around their relationship to money that they never saw before. And in that instant, their relationship to money and to themselves and the world around them shifts.
Yeah.
Now, it may take a little bit of time for it to completely play out and impact all those areas of their life. But them in that moment, they transform and suddenly money is something different in their lives. And
Mm.
I think the important part of that conversation is I like to relate how we relate to money to how we would relate to a significant other.
Well,
If most of us related to a significant other the way we relate to money, we'd be single. If you imagine, okay, I want money. I want it to be here now. I want to have as much of it as I want. When I have it, I want to show it off to everybody so I look really, really cool and people see how much money I have and how cool I am and how
yeah.
successful I am. When it's not there, I don't want to think about it. When I get things with it, I don't want to be grateful. You need to be here when I want you here for as long as I want you.
My gosh.
That's it.
I never thought of it like that.
Right. Well,
I want to use it when I want to use it.
exactly. And we have no thought to it whatsoever. It is
Sure.
this inanimate objects that is there for us only. Now, if we treated our significant others like that, we would just not have relationships. But
Yeah.
what if when money's not with us, we're actually thinking about it? We're actually thinking about how can I make my relationship better with money? How can I be a better steward or a better partner with my money? When money does show up, do I light up? Do I express gratitude and appreciation that you're in my life? Am I
Yeah.
constantly thinking about how can I expand my own capacity around my relationship to money to be a better person in my relationship to money? And most importantly, do I stop expecting money to provide me with things that it can't? I mean, we
Okay.
would never expect our significant other to go, rebuild an engine block when they don't know anything about engines. We just
Right.
wouldn't do that, or expect them to be a pilot, or expect them to, I don't know, build a house and they have no concept of how to do that. No, we know what our significant other can and cannot do, and we would not expect them to do something they can't. And yet people expect money to make them happy every single day.
Yeah.
They expect money to bring them fulfillment. They expect money to bring them the sense of security. And money cannot provide any of those things. And then we think money does things that it actually isn't. We think it's
Yeah.
evil. We think it's corruptive. We think all these things about money that are not true. So if we did that with our significant other, again, another relationship that would be failed. So when we understand what money truly is, money is simply an inert object. It's like water, it's like electricity, it's like air. It's not good, it's not bad. It just is what it is. It can amplify the personality traits that we already have. So we all have propensities to be good or evil.
Mm.
We've all seen that in ourselves. There are moments when we can do things that are extremely generous and kind. And then there are other times when, we screw up and we can be cruel and evil, right? When we have more money, it doesn't make us one way or the other. It just simply amplifies the behaviors that we choose to take on, which is why we see people who are really, really wealthy and sometimes they're horrible. They get worse and worse, not because the money's making them worse and worse, but because money's simply amplifying the behaviors that they choose to embrace. So they treat people horribly. They treat people with disrespect. They don't care about anyone but themselves. And then the opposite is true as well. We see people with lots and lots of money. Bill Gates comes to mind, who are just so magnanimous, so generous with their money, creating foundations, doing things to help people in the world. So it isn't the money, it's who we are and how we are those behavior patterns are amplified by having more money.
Yeah. Building that kind of love affair with money
Mm.
and versus that. So that is, you just kind of blew me away there, but I absolutely love the way you just articulated the true relationship with it and the expectation to put that on somebody else or compare that to being in a relationship with it. Even too, you're not going to treat yourself if you're treating yourself like that. It's a self reflection of the other in there. And I was going to say too, you do see people, then there's the magnification. I'm just going to kind of go off of a couple of things you said too, but add a little bit. So one of them is when you see the magnification of somebody's scarcity or fear, they become controlling or trying to hoard it or control the people around them. And you see that where they start to impact the others around them versus when the celebration and the gratitude. I think the gratitude, and you touched on it as well, is just incredibly powerful. There's times where if I were to look at, say, the person I was 5 or 10 years ago, and you imagine yourself looking at the crystal ball of who I am today, you're like, oh, how would it made it? I'm keep being a little dramatic and playful with it, but there is that sense. And because you forget the levels change and the perspectives can change. So feeling the
Yes.
gratitude with it at times. You know,
Yes. Well, your point is well taken. And if we look back at the relationship analogy, many people find themselves inside of their soulmate. We
mm,
discover who we truly are. I'm thinking back to the movie As Good as It Gets, where Jack Nicholson said, "You make me want to be a better man." He found something inside of himself that he couldn't find alone, that with that significant other, suddenly it exploded open and he became a better person. She became a better person, and then they became a better couple. And it's the same thing with money. When we truly see who we are inside of our relationship with money, we realize, I want to be a better man. I want to
yeah,
be a better woman. I want to be a better person. I have this extraordinary opportunity, this extraordinary blessing, this extraordinary relationship with money. What am I going to do with that? Right?
yeah,
Now, not everybody does that. There are people that go off in other directions, but I think a lot of people find themselves inside of those relationships. And that's why I say that money is a mirror of who we are. Our relationship to money is a mirror of who we are in the world, right? In our relationship to the people around us and to ourselves as well. Do we respect ourselves? Do we
yeah,
respect the people around us? If we don't, odds are we don't respect money. And the inverse is true. If we don't respect money, odds are we don't respect the people around us as well or ourselves.
yeah. And I could see that too, because sometimes we speak to ourselves more harshly than we do our surroundings. So, I mean, there could even be a sense of, and I really do like that you're focusing on that mirror and coming back to that. I was going to ask you, the fear of success is there's an essence in the fears of success that not solely, but that can be like, I have to become something, I'm not going to be the same person with the money that I'm not. And there's
Mhm.
fears of change, or there's fears of who I am today, or the shattering, or the phoenix that has to burn. And I think that there's these ideas that we can concoct and we can build into those.
Yeah.
And, who am I with all this money, and an identity crisis or something?
Right. But I think those things existed before the money,
Yeah, there you go.
and they
Yeah.
simply get amplified. So I don't know who I am. I don't have self-confidence. I have more money now. Now what I'm going to do is do more things to demonstrate that I don't have self-confidence and that I'm concerned about what other people think. And so I
Mm.
might diminish other people. I might demean other people so that I feel more confident about myself. I feel better about myself. And then ultimately what I think happens is a lot of times we attract those people to us, the
Oh,
people
yeah.
that want to be around the people with money, as it were. And then we choose to surround ourselves with people who elevate us, or we surround ourselves with people who are just yes people, sycophants.
Sure.
And when we're surrounded by sycophants, we lose track of reality. We lose touch with reality. And we see that playing out oftentimes with celebrities or wealthy business people. And we look at their lives and we're like, what are they doing? They think they can do anything? And suddenly they literally lost sight of and lost track of reality. They're no longer grounded in reality, but there's no one around them to bring them back into reality and say, no, you can't do that. You are being completely rude or wrong or bad or whatever it is. They surround themselves with people that won't tell them the truth. And so they live in this false world. Whereas on the flip side, you surround yourself with people who tell you the truth. I have people, my best friend, Stuart, anytime I step out of line, he's like, dude, what are you doing? I can't believe you just said that, right?
Yeah.
He is not afraid to call me out, and I want him to call me out because I know I'm not perfect. I know I will make mistakes, and I want people around me to hold me to account for who I say I am every single moment because I don't get a chance to take a day off with that. Even on vacation, I'm still committed to being great with people. I may not be committed to making a difference because I'm taking time off and I'm just hanging out and doing my own thing. Always treat people with respect. I will always treat people
All
with
right.
the kindness that I want to be treated with. So these are the kinds of conversations that people start to get into as they start to explore their relationship with money.
And so the surrounding thing is fascinating too, because different aspects of our lives, and again, different seasons of our lives. And I'm going to take it unrelated to money for a moment. So there's things like dating and relationships, and you kind of attract to certain people, or there's times in there to hang out with people and you go to the bars too much, and there's the social aspect, but then you find yourself that are people that are just into that mentality. You start to flock together, and it makes absolute sense when you're talking about money, because money is such a big aspect of our life. And it's very interesting that you kind of brought up the, kind of the idea of if you have a collection of yes people around you
Mhm.
that are kind of the remora fish that are just, you want them to feed off you because there's insecurities or whatever the version of that is, that you start collecting those people, which was again there before the
Right.
money came into this to the swing. Are there some people is there other patterns in people that almost go the other way, where they almost can become reclusive or pull themselves out and go the complete opposite, like the hermit type of patterns as
I,
well?
I don't want to say that I've ever seen a hermit, but I have seen people that become more aware of who they are and what
Mhm.
they want and their place in the world. And oftentimes that will take them down a path of, you know what? I thought I wanted to do this, but I really realized I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I've always wanted to do that, but I've buried it because so many
Yeah.
people around me said, no, 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 you need to do this. You need to do that. And they suddenly get really clear about, no, this is what I want. This is who I am fundamentally at my core, connected to my higher self, whatever that looks like for you. And so they find the confidence to explore that, to let that shine, as it were. And
Yeah.
then their lives look completely different than they ever have before. And that's ultimately what it's all about. There are tells as I'm having conversation with people, I'll sometimes ask people, what would you do if I gave you $1,000,000? Free and clear, you got $1,000,000. And sometimes they'll say, well, I give a lot of it away. And that for me says that they think there's something inherently evil about money that they need to give away in order to compensate for the fact that they've gotten this evil thing or this bad thing. They need to give it away. No, you don't. Nobody says you need to give anything away. What are you going to do with $1,000,000 if you've got it? Then other people will say, oh, well, I'd buy a car and I'd buy a house and I'd pay for my parents' house and I'd go on vacation and I'd quit my job. Well, that tells me that they know how to disappear money. They know how to make money vanish very, very quickly. They have no concept of how to make that money grow, how to nurture it, how to have it thrive, just like a relationship. Do you want to just use that relationship up and have it disappear? Or do you want to nurture it and have it grow and get better and better and better every single day? So as we start to have conversations around money, we can start to see things that are underneath the surface of what we like to say or we want people to think. And then suddenly we know, okay, this is what's going on. Now let's work on that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because there is a level of the discovery process too. Because as adults, we go into this adulthood, and if we have kids, and we're married, and all these things, and then there's these obligatory, in my case, a dutiful husband and a father, and I go to work and you make the money and you do and of course, women have theirs, and it's just everybody has their stuff that you kind of get wrapped into. And I really like the way you said that because it was making me self-reflect too. It's like, what would I do? Honestly, there's things like this. Like I'm talking to you, we're talking about different stories and collections. It's like, I want to do more of this, and what is this? This isn't money. This conversation is an example of exploratory. So you're having the confidence. So this is the way I'm interpreting it. If you see something, please point out a pattern, but I'm seeing this. You feel the security and build the confidence to not be as hinged on the guilt of the dutiful stuff. You start to discover too, I believe, that you see these things where like, no, I wanted the money because I thought I wanted this, but it wasn't that. It was kind of, you see the next layer of something that, oh, this really gave me the window to be a writer, or, all of a sudden, I want to do improv comedy or something like that. Those are my things, but I'm just making some up. But to have those exploratory in the sense of the freedom where you're not stuck in the root
Yep.
insecurities
and that's the key word, Paul, is the freedom. I've watched people go from this to in a moment's conversation where suddenly they've jumped off the hamster wheel. They were in that hamster wheel of, if I could just make $100,000, I'd be happy. Get to $100,000. Maybe 200,000. I think that'll do it. I'll be happy. They're working on the hamster wheel. Get to 2 and they're not happy. It's because they want money to provide something it can't.
Yeah.
And so they're literally throwing money into a black hole that can never be filled, or on the hamster wheel that never ends. And suddenly they jump off the hamster wheel and they realize, oh my gosh, I've actually got enough. They suddenly get the concept of enough. Now, that doesn't mean they never want to make more. That doesn't mean they don't set goals any longer, but they have a sense of enough. I had this extraordinary opportunity a year ago to go to Thailand. And I met my in-laws, and I'd never been to Asia. And so it was my first trip to Asia. And I met these people who lived in a country of extremes in terms of wealth and poverty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Bangkok, it's just packed with people. And you see people who are living in what we would consider hovels, and then people living in these beautiful sky rises, right? But the commonality between all of them is they were happy.
Mm-hmm.
They call Thailand the country of smiles, not because they have more dentists than anyone else, but because people are happy and they smile everywhere they go because they know what enough is. There are families that will go out and they'll work for the day and earn enough to cover what they need for the day. And that's all they need. And they're happy. And for me, I had to wrap my mind around it. I had to get, whoa, this is a whole new level that I never even seen for myself, right? And I expanded just from that experience alone. And so I think a lot of people get really clear about enough. And suddenly they don't have to measure or gauge it against anything else. I don't have to look better than so-and-so. I don't have to make more than such and such. I don't have to blah, blah, blah. None of that. Suddenly it's all about me and what I need and what I want. And then they get the difference between needs and wants, right? Oh, I have to have this. No, you don't have to have that. You just want it. And
Yeah.
to what degree are you going to go to get that thing that you want? Well, look, all we need is a roof over our head. And it doesn't need to be a specific kind of roof. We need a little bit of food. We need shelter. We need clothes. That's all we need. Everything else is really a want. And suddenly that comes into perspective. And then people have a different relationship to money and themselves and the world around them. And then they can start living and they can start creating and they can start building whatever it is that they want to build, freed up from that.
Yeah. So when you were saying that, the word expectation kept ringing, and freedom from, there was a little bit of freedom from the expectations. There's a quote too, I think it's Ram Dass, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something about the deep work is easy if you have no expectations, or, it's kind of the ease. And when you live in those states of ease within certain, well, subsets or whatever if it's love or money or health, or, these different categories of our focus in our lives, even that almost magnifies the times in my life where I've had ebbs and flows, is when I'm not thinking about it or I'm not fixed on it. I'm not sitting there concerned about micro, like it's, you kind of plant a seed and then, oh, let's dig up the seed and look at it. And then, okay, we'll bury it again, like, let's look it out again. And you start, and you, or like the proverbial stew, you're like, all right, I'm going to make the stew. And like, well, let's take all the ingredients out again, kind of look at them. Do we have enough in there? Just fix on,
Yeah.
on some of that stuff too, where you're going to draw on that energy,
Right.
that frenetic energy.
Well, I think this is why there are a couple of reasons, but I think this is one of the reasons manifestation doesn't work for people.
Yeah.
Is in the world of Abraham Hicks, if you're in that conversation, we're looking at the law of attraction and we say, okay, I want to manifest money in my life. But I'm going to use a different example. I want to manifest the perfect soulmate in my life, right? And I can write down a list of all the things that I want in that person. And then I go out in the world and they have to have blonde hair and they have to have blue eyes and it has to be this way. And we've immediately cut ourselves off from
For sure.
all the world of possibilities of the right person showing up into our lives. And it's the same thing with money. We say we want more money in our lives. And then we go out, it's got to look just like this. And we've now shut down the universe from providing us with exactly what we've asked for because we've already predetermined how it's supposed to look. When we can let go of those things, when we can truly surrender to that vibrational frequency of money will flow to me easily and abundantly every single day from this day forward. And then we go out in the world and we look for evidence of that everywhere. Every conversation, every interaction, every possibility, every option. There's a penny on the ground. There's a nickel on the ground. There's a dollar over there. Absolutely celebrating money every time it shows up in our lives. That's when we're manifesting. It's when we cut ourselves off from those possibilities because it has to look a certain way. And we're trying to force the outcome. Like you're saying, we're going to dig up the seed to see how it's doing. No, give the seed an opportunity to do what it needs to do, to come into this world the way it needs to come into this world, and it will be perfect.
Yeah. I think even too, I like that example you gave it, because you're not going to have enough malleability or enough ability to iterate or observe. Like you said, if I'm so fixed on something, I'm not going to see anything else around me at all.
Yep.
And then I guess in that same relevant on the other side, and maybe this isn't something, but it may be it's too ambiguous or too watery or too floaty. Like it's just kind of like this unanchored.
Yeah, I think that we want to be really clear about, and it is another downfall of people. They just say, oh, I just want lots and lots of money. Okay, well, what do you want money for? Just saying you want lots and lots of money is not going to have lots and lots of money show up in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically do you want money for? Create that vision, that intention around what you want it for and how much. And then start to see the money flowing into those different directions. That focus is really, really important because we don't have, it's kind of like rain falling on sand. It just disappears, goes nowhere. Where does it go, right? We create a channel and we know where that channel is leading. And then we've got a reservoir at the end of that channel to hold that money. Then all of a sudden we've created a system and a structure by which we can funnel and flow money the way we want it to flow. Same thing for love. If we have a sense of how much love we want in our lives, how much joy we want in our lives, right? We can then start to look for it and start to have it. But if we don't have a sense of that, we're not looking for it, we're going to miss opportunities for love to show up in our lives. Where are we stopping love from entering in our lives? And where are we not giving love from other people that we ought to be sharing love with? Because ultimately, that blocks love from showing up in our lives everywhere. These are all really great conversations to be having with ourselves every single day that expand our own capacity around money, around joy, around love, around happiness, around fulfillment, all of those things.
Yeah. There was an example too. I was thinking where we were talking about that was with my kids, like, one of the many reasons is to have more time with my kids. But what's funny about that is then I wouldn't be with them.
Right.
I'd be thinking about doing something else or some type of responsibility or some obligation and expectation. And I'd be stuck in that mindset of like, oh, well, if I have more, then I'll be able to be present. And it was like, no, 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 you're not present now. And I'm not asking for presence and giving them attention in this example. That doesn't actually require any money.
Right.
I'm standing in the room, be present. So there's the recognition of that, of you having what you already desire in some sense too.
Yes. And we miss it oftentimes because we aren't present. And there's a great book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of
Right.
Now that is all about how powerful it is to be present in the moment. I was just reading an article from a man who's talking about focus, and he's talking about being in the moment. He said, my daughter had wanted to play a game with me. She said, Daddy, let's play a game. And it was all about, if you had a superpower, what would that superpower be? Right. And so he sat down with her and he said, what would your superpower be? And just as she started to answer, his phone vibrated and he pulled his phone out and he started looking at his phone. By the time he finished with that email, she got up and left the room
Oh man.
because she was
I know.
done. And
Yeah.
these are the
I've done
moments
it.
that we miss. When my mom was growing up, she was talking about when she was a little girl and her dad would come home, my grandfather would come home from work and he'd sit in the chair and he'd read his paper. And all the kids knew, you don't bother dad when he's reading the paper. But if they walked up next to him and just stood there, leaning just a little bit on his arm, not making any noise, he would simply lift up the newspaper, they'd crawl into his lap, and he'd put the newspaper down and continue reading. And that was their opportunity to be with him, right? So we have opportunities to connect with the people we
Yeah.
love. Are we able to do it freed up from those distractions, freed up from all those other things that are in our mind and be with them? Because it isn't about the quantity of the time that we spend with someone. It's the quality of time. If I'm
Yeah.
with someone and I'm only with them for 20 minutes, that is going to be far more powerful and far more impactful. I'm with someone and distracted for 3 hours. You
Yeah.
weren't with me at all today. I don't understand why we even bothered doing this. You were on your
Right.
phone all day long. You were doing other things all day long, right?
Yeah.
So you're speaking about being present, and it is extraordinarily powerful.
I think too, on the same note, to just continue with that for a moment, is we really do have many of the things we truly desire. Maybe it's just in small doses or the non-recognition. That some of that stuff was a game changer. And I know that in my life, or talking to people about stuff like that, when they have those revelations or those realizations, you really have it. Maybe it's not the big piece of pie as you want it, but you do have the sweet nectar of what you have. So
Yes.
and so if I may, I'm glad you brought, because that was one of my questions when you brought up the story about your grandfather and stuff. You hear about kind of lineage or family traumas and what gets carried over. Like a couple generations was the Great Depression, and then there's different times, World War II, and there's these different strife modes. Our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, they came from different eras as well as what we have today. So I guess some of those family traumas and some of that stuff, does that play into it?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be trauma. It can be just a generational mindset that gets
Mhm.
carried over from one generation to the next. At least this is the world that I grew up in. My grandparents were immigrants from other countries, and then my parents were raised in that immigrant community, and then they moved off to become the first generation born here, living here, and then I was the second generation. But I could see later on in life, not when I was growing up, but I could see how that generational mindset around money impacted me, 2 generations later, because
Yeah.
my parents never talked about money. It was taboo because their parents never talked about money. And so that got carried on to me. And so we now live in a world where social media has everybody wanting to look like they're rich and they're jet setting and they're doing all this really cool stuff. And yet that's not the truth. We don't have that real relationship with money. Most of the people that we see on social media, not all, But a lot of people that we see on social media are putting on a persona to
Yeah.
look like they have wealth. Many of them are going into debt to look like they have wealth. And so we live in this world where it's more important to look like I'm rich. It's more important to try to impress people and go into debt than it is to actually build wealth.
Mhm.
And so when we can break those mindsets, when we can shift that oftentimes generational mindset where we didn't talk about money, I'm supposed to know about it, but I don't understand it. Well, I'm going to educate myself about it now. I'm actually going to start talking about money now. I'm actually going to have those conversations and shift that money mindset. And now I'm going to actually get into a world of, you know what, I'm more interested in building wealth than I'm interested in looking like I'm wealthy.
Yeah. So some of the sound, there was like, Charlie Munger, who was, Warren Buffett's, and then Charlie Munger passed away at this point, but, um, I think he was one of those billionaires that embodied just a very simple life. Like, if you didn't know who he was, you would have no idea that that guy's a billionaire.
Yeah.
And whether he mastered it or not, I mean, there's a real power within that too. I don't wanna overgeneralize mindset, but, to go into the shallow pool of proving or showing off to get adoration or get attention, that's very interesting aspect of the psyche. But I guess too, how do I say this? Like almost proximity. And I know we kind of talked about, people say your network is your net worth, and the proximity of, and I've witnessed people that, some people that don't want to talk about money or have resentment towards money. The communication is different than somebody who's really, people that want to grow, they want to invest their money. They talk about money. They talk about investments. They talk about businesses. They want to buy. They want to talk. So, there really is a power within your sphere as
Yeah.
well too.
Yeah, we are a product of the world we live in and the conversations that we have and the people we surround ourselves with. So if you're having conversations every day about how broke you are and how hard things are, the world you're creating is that you're broke and life is hard. But if you're in a world, and I don't care how much money you have or don't have, it's irrelevant. If you're having a conversation of, I'm building wealth, I'm creating a life that I love, I have a life that's free and easy, that's the world that you're going to grow up in. That's the world that you're going to be living in, and it will come to fruition. And the people that you surround yourself with, if you surround yourself with people that bring drama every single day, bring chaos, bring strife, bring
Yeah.
anxiety, that's what your life is going to be. You surround yourself with people that bring calm, that elevate you, that elevate each other. That's the kind of world that you're going to be living in. So these are all important conversations to be having. And look, this isn't for everyone. Not everybody is interested in this conversation. And I have no judgment about that. When I talk about people that are going into debt to look like they're wealthy, that are going into debt to look good, I don't have a
Mm.
judgment about that. It's simply an assessment of one thing works to build wealth and the other thing doesn't. I don't have a moral conversation about it one way or the other. But if there
Yeah.
are people that are listening to this who are truly interested in building wealth, and you find that those are the conversations that you're having, well, I'm really interested in what other people think. You're never going to get to that place of being wealthy. And wealthy isn't just having more money. Wealthy is a state of being. And when you can be in that state of being, you will be freed up from what other people think. That's why someone like Warren Buffett and the people around him don't care about the kind of car that they drive. I think Warren Buffett still lives in the house he grew up in, right? That's not what it's about. It's about the substance of your character. It's about the quality of your conversations. And are you making a difference in the world? Or are you interested in looking like something? Those are the differences, and I think that will make the biggest difference for those who are listening.
Okay. Well, let's talk on habits really quick too. Do you have we'll go on the negative side first, but you kind of have some like kind of the bad or the worst habits that people kind of have or you see in the
Yeah,
pattern structures?
spending more than you make,
Mhm.
worried about what other people think about you. Those are going to be the things, expecting money to provide you with something that it can't. I would say those are the top three things that
Yeah.
are going to keep people down when it comes to creating the kind of wealth and prosperity that they want, that sense of thriving. If we let go of those things, right, we can suddenly see a whole new opportunity for creating and building wealth. So letting go of what other people think. I don't care what other people think. I used to live in that world, that jet set world, expensive cars, expensive homes, expensive clothes, all of that. I don't live in that world anymore because I saw how bankrupt it was. And I had to go through the eye of the needle to get there, to be able to actually see it and embrace it. And then don't spend more than you make. If you're spending more than you make, you're on the wrong path to wealth. You're on the path to debt, right? And then I forget what the last one was that I said, but don't worry about what people think. Don't spend more than you make. And I don't know, I'm going to throw this one out. Expand your own capacity around money.
Yeah.
Don't allow ignorance about money to stop you. And a lot of people they want to pretend like they know, but they don't know. Stop
Yeah.
pretending like you know. Go learn. There are a million places you can go learn about money now.
Absolutely. So I love that you said it's a state and the habits that you brought, or that advice that you brought. As far as I'm concerned, everything you said was a very internal journey. I just believe that we're on a journey of self mastery and our own unique fingerprint. But everything you said there wasn't about the habits, like put 10% away and put this. It was really just the deep work, behavioral science and consumerism, advertising. Those are the big drivers. It's the self, it's the others. Like, what are the others, to impress upon or to drive the influence of others? And it's the systems within systems. What can we do to accelerate things? And those are the big drivers. And what you touched on there was beautiful because it was all internal work, all internal recognition. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but in some sense, it's very pure in the heart space.
Well,
so
none of the external stuff can happen with any kind of longevity if we haven't dealt with what's in here. It's kind of like trying to build a house on a foundation that's rickety. I've got this beautiful house I want to build, but the foundation is just terrible. We'll never sustain it. You'll get that house up and it will collapse. So that internal work is really important. It's kind of like going to the gym. I go to the gym and I work out every day, but I come home and I eat cupcakes all day long. Well, I'm not going to see the results, right? And I keep thinking negative thoughts about myself. Oh, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, all those things. Well, all that internal is going to give what the external ends up being and will give my actions. If we shift that internal and we start thinking positively about ourselves, we start not just thinking, but believing positively about ourselves. When we hear that negative, no, you're too stupid. No, you're too ugly. No, you can't do it. No, this will never happen to you. Those negative thoughts, we acknowledge them and give them up and then create new conversations and new thoughts. That's when you're on the path to creating the life that you want. And then the actions to take from there, putting money aside, saving it for specific things. Those are all things that will happen much more easily.
Yeah. I had a guest on one time, she was talking about belief and belief patterns and certain questions you can ask yourself. And I like the way she articulated, because there's levels, I'll just say, I might be butchering it, but it was basically the belief of, is this possible in this world? Period, end of story. First, do you even believe that it's possible? Then it's like, do you believe it's possible for you as an individual? And then it gets into, do you believe you're worthy of it type of thing? And it wasn't exactly like that, but I was like, wow, you can kind of have like, yes, it's possible in this world, but it's not possible for me, or something like that, And it was like, wow, what an interesting way, because belief isn't just necessarily one layer to it in that sense. And I really like that thought process. And it really dovetails nicely into what you're talking about too, is do you have the value set of, am I worthy of this? Or do I believe this is something within my life? And do I believe that, I can do it? And, you might even be, I believe I'm worthy of it, but I don't believe I can do it or something. There might be a framework in there that you're and I think sometimes when you ask those questions, I'll, kind of step out of just what we're talking about in a sense, but if you just feel it in your body, if you feel like to ask yourself that question, and do I feel like I have a sixth, or is it my neck tightening up, or like you kind of talked about, and, you kind of just observe, you're like, maybe you start to identify where some of those things are.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about, I like to call it spheres of integrity. So we've got the level of world, then we've got the level of community, and then we've got me personally, right?
Yeah.
So I can believe it can happen to the world. I can believe it happening for my community, but I don't believe it's going to ever happen for me, right? And that I don't believe it's ever going to happen for me is going to sabotage your ability to produce or create whatever it is that you want to create. This is the other reason why manifesting, why, what's the word? Oh my gosh. When you think something positive.
Like affirmations or visualization?
The word just eluded me there. These affirmations and manifestations don't work because people are operating on top of a negative money mindset, a negative belief that stops it from ever taking seed. And so it's kind of like having a mud pie, right? And then I'm gonna put some icing on it. This is my affirmation. This is my manifestation. But this mud pie is still underneath there. It doesn't go away. So it infects and poisons everything we put on top. Whereas
Mhm.
in the work that I do, in the work that you want to be doing is recognizing those negative conversations. No, it'll never happen for you. There's that conversation. Don't fight it. Don't ignore it. Own it. Own it
Yeah.
right there. Declare it. Okay, I've had this conversation for 20 years, for 30 years, or however long it's been. Then let it go. Like literally say, you know what? I'm done with you. You've been with
Yeah.
me for this long. I'm letting you go. I'm handing you over to the universe. I'm handing you over to whatever. I don't care, God,
Yeah.
wherever. I'm letting you go. You no longer have dominion in my life. I release you. And then in that moment, create the new conversation that you want to create and then go out and watch for it to manifest in the world.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said create the new conversation because I believe too, like when you do talk about even like spirituality, you're talking about like doing shadow work or, getting out the traumas or just the thought
Mhm.
processes and everything too. Sometimes you can, if you create a vacuum there and you don't reinforce it with another thought process, it can backfill or spill back and you go back to the old patterns and stuff too. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
said to kind of, create the new, to fill that with the new positive thoughts in there, the new
Yes,
reinforcements.
absolutely.
You know,
Again, clear the
yeah,
old stuff out and then create it inside of that space you've created.
yeah. I'm glad you said not on top because then you got the saturation of what that old is. You just kind of buried it and
Right.
it's just, it's still going to grow or the old seeds of the weeds are going to kind of pop up through there,
Exactly.
And since we're using metaphors, analogies,
Right.
similes, and everything in there,
And
yeah,
it will choke
yeah.
the roots of anything you're trying to plant and kill it.
So, I think just a couple last things before we kind of go. But one, I think money. We said money's freedom. I think I've viewed money as like a resource. There's different ways that I think people have this idea of money, and money is, in some ways, can feel nebulous to people, or because like let's just play with this for 1 second here, and I definitely poke holes or I welcome you to is like with air. I know what it is. I breathe it in. I'm getting oxygen out of it. Water. I know I'm taking it in. It has, there's very specific things there. There's clothing. It keeps me warm and I'm not walking around naked or, like
Right.
there's shelter, from the weather. There's some of those like, there's those, it eludes me the name, but there's the basic needs of survival,
Right.
levels as well too. And money is an interesting one because it really kind of webs and threads and the connective tissue throughout in my vision is all of it. It's not that it's supportive of it, it's not that it drives it, or it's not, it's just an interesting, and I know I'm not really asking you a question as much as I'm kind of saying is that, given that little scenario that I just laid out, what are your kind of thoughts or feelings in that arena on that?
So we're getting to the fundamental ability of money to provide us with the things that it can and cannot.
Mhm.
So there are very few things in life that that we money is one of the things that we cannot almost everybody has to interact with. There are people
Mhm.
that can go their whole life without ever having a relationship. They can go their whole life without ever owning a car, having a
Mhm.
best friend, or owning a home, or those kinds of things, right? Money is not one of those things. We all interact with money at some point in our lives. It's just part of life, right? And I think when we start to look at what you're talking about is I think it's Asimov's hierarchy of something. I can't remember the name of it, but
Yes, yes,
we're
exactly.
looking at what we really need and then all of the layers working down to the lowest base things that we need for survival. We need food,
Mhm.
we need water, we need shelter, we need clothes, right? We need to be protected from the elements, those kinds of things. When we get really clear about what those things are, we then get really clear about how much money we really need,
Mm.
like need versus want. And once we get in that space, then we become like the Thai people that I met who can live life full of joy and happiness, clear about what they actually need versus what they want. And then they can make those choices for themselves. So we can actually choose, I'm going to choose to make more money because I want to go on that vacation or I'd like to buy a nicer house, not because I'm worried about impressing the neighbors, but because I want to have, like for me, I like to have beautiful things around me, right? But I don't need them. I'm clear
Mhm.
about what I want versus what I need. And I'm clear about the things that I choose to want and why I want them in my life. And when we get clear about those things, we're not driven for it. We're actually striving for something. We're looking for something that we know, well, when I look at this portrait behind me, it just brings me such joy. But I don't need the portrait to have joy in my life, right?
Mhm.
There's that two different worlds. And so we're looking for having money to have the things in our lives that we choose, that we want, that are above and beyond what our basic needs are. And I think it's a very deep philosophical conversation, but it becomes very simple when we start to get into the world of what do I need versus what do I want. And I'm no longer driven by something outside of me to have all this money and look a certain way.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well,
I answered your question
you
fully.
did. Well, oddly enough, you answered a bunch of questions all at once that I had rolling around in my head there. So what was funny is because prior to that, I was going to say my last question was kind of about steps to resetting the thermostat.
Mm.
But in all honesty, you really touched on them all. But if you have a couple, maybe just for the audience here, maybe a few simple, maybe for some little steps
Yep.
or fundamental thoughts on just kind of resetting the thermostat to kind of close out today.
Absolutely. So very, very quickly, money is a currency. And as a currency, it flows like a current. We talked about water, electricity, wind, right? It flows just like any current. It flows in a very unique way, though, in that it flows in a circle. We intersect that circle. So it flows to us, through us, and away from us, back around to us, through us, and away from us, with a reservoir on the side that we get to keep. Because it flows in a circle, anywhere in that flow are blocks. So
Mm,
we want
yeah.
to be aware of blocks in the flow of money coming to us and blocks in the flow of money going away from
Yeah.
us. And then we want to clear those blocks because those blocks are what set our financial thermostat. Money is the root of all evil. People who have money are evil. I hate the wealthy. I hate my boss. I hate people in power. Those are all blocks in the flow of money and will keep money from flowing to us and ultimately to the reservoir on the side that we want. Blocks in the flow of money going away from us are things like, I hate paying my taxes. I hate paying my fair share. I hate paying retail. I will never pay somebody what they asked for. I pay my bills late. Oh, I just hold on to money every time we penny pinch, right? Those are all blocks in the flow of money going away from us. When we clear those blocks out, money will flow more freely and abundantly in our lives. There's a very, very simple 3-step process. I've already touched on it a little bit without articulating it. Number 1, recognize and acknowledge and own the block. Money's the root of all evil. Oh my gosh, I've had that for my whole life. I can own that that's been my conversation. Second step, let it go. This is the hardest step for people because it's almost like cutting off an arm. It's been with us for so long. We're so used to it. We're so familiar with it. We can't let it go. So if you find that you're having a problem, it's okay. Keep working on it until you can say, I let this conversation go. I release it to the care of God and care of the universe, the trees outside. I don't care. Whatever it is for you, release it and say it over and over and over again out loud until you feel it like, oh, I can feel it kind of going away. That's when we've got that space that gets created. Then in that moment, create what money is for you now. Money flows to me easily and abundantly every single day. Feel it. Don't just say it. Feel it in your heart. Feel that vibrational frequency shift like, oh my gosh, it really does flow to me easily and abundantly every single day. And then the bonus step and the really most fundamental is go out and watch for it. Look for it.
That's fun.
Acknowledge it when it shows up. One year I found almost $800 in found money just because I know money flows to me easily and abundantly every single day. And I literally would find money everywhere I went, put it in a special jar. I still do to this day. So these are the 4 steps that you can take to clear those blocks. And the last thing I'll say is if you can't identify it, like you can't specifically say, oh, I think money's the root of all evil, or I think it's always something. You can't pinpoint it, but you know it's there. It's fine to just pick it. I know it's there. I know it's a block. I can own that I've had it as that block and I'm releasing it. So take it and release it. Don't let it stop you because you can't identify what it is.
Oh,
You know
that's
there's
powerful.
it there, but just
Yeah,
let it go and then create something new.
that's powerful. And all 4 of those really resonate. And number 2 was what you kind of ended with there was the dependency on that is we create actions around that. And you can see it in people's lives. I've seen it in my own where you have that little belief pattern and then the actions, you just add actions to support that belief. So, and I loved how you just said that is if you can't quite identify it, because there are things you can't put your finger on. It's not just about money too. It's other aspects of our lives. There's just sometimes like, I just know something's off and I can't quite, like I can't quite see it. But I just love that idea. I know you just acknowledge it. I know it's there.
Yep.
And to release that. And I believe whatever we believe in, a higher self, a higher purpose, will identify first
And
part of the
it's so
release.
important that people get that. I don't care what it is. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be a specific thing. There's no one answer for everyone. There's no right answer for everyone. There's the right answer for you. If it's God, if it's the universe, if it's something else, whatever it is, I don't care. Even if it's just, I'm just letting you go into nothing, out into the space, that's totally fine. It's taking the action that's important. It's
Mhm.
making the declaration. You no longer have dominion over my life. You no longer have power over my life. Now, these conversations will never go away. They will always be there, but they'll get quieter and quieter, and they'll get less frequent over time. As long as you keep letting it go every time it shows up, there's that conversation. I'm letting you go again. Here's what money is for me, and keep empowering the new conversation. The more you have that new conversation, the more it becomes your life. And then you look back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 years, 5 years, and suddenly like, whoa, money does flow freely and abundantly to me
Yeah.
every single day.
Oh, I love it. So how can people work with you or reach out? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, there are two places. You can go to either one of my websites. They both go to the same place, periclesrellas.com or resetyourfinancialthermostat.com. They both go to periclesrellas.com. And right there on the main page is access to my free masterclass, the 4 keys to
Oh,
resetting
beautiful.
your financial thermostat. Put your email in and watch it. It's 27 minutes. It will literally give you everything you need to reset your financial thermostat and get you on the path to creating the wealth and prosperity that you're looking for in your life and that relationship with yourself that you're looking for. And then, of course, at the end of it, if it's something you want to continue on to the next level, all the instructions are there for what to do.
Beautiful. I can only imagine that's got to be a great video there. So that's awesome. So anybody listen, definitely check that out. So thanks again for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Paul, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. And I hope this made a difference for everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely.